All right, we are being joined by a guy who started right here locally with Brian Fury at the New England Pro Wrestling Academy just a few years ago, and in quick order became a player in New England, winning the Chaotic Wrestling Heavyweight Championship. Then last year, he won Ring of Honor's Top Prospect Tournament, which put him on the map nationally. On September 30th, he returns home to Massachusetts to take part in Ring of Honor Wrestling's All-Star Extravaganza 8 at the Lowell Memorial Auditorium in Lowell, Massachusetts, where he will challenge Bobby Fish for the ROH television title. He retired the Kingpin Brian Malonis. Please welcome to the Wrestling Podcast About Nothing, Donovan Dijak. Hello, sir.
Hello. Thank you for having me. What's going on?
Why'd you have to bring that up? Here we are in my home. We were watching football. We're eating chili.
Having a good time.
Yeah, and then Mike's gonna ruin it and bring up the fact that you ended my illustrious chaotic wrestling career.
I did it.
What's the whole story behind the retirement from Chaotic Wrestling?
Well, do you want the storyline or the real story? I don't know.
Ooh.
What are you looking for here? No, I was very jealous of Dijak's success. So maybe I tied him up with some zip ties. I talked some trash in his face.
Very rude.
Yeah. I threatened to do some sort of bodily harm to you, like kind of alluding to maybe I might kill you. Even I don't know.
There may have been death threats.
I pointed out your girlfriend at the time. Well, I think she was your fiance at the time.
Fiance at the time.
It wasn't that long ago. It was like a few months ago.
Yep.
So and then I put my career on the line, and he beat me at Cold Fury.
Yeah.
He went to business for himself.
I shot it. I shot it on you.
All right, so we'll talk more Chaotic Wrestling in a second, but let's go all the way back, Donovan Dijak. So you were a two-sport athlete in college.
Hey, can I interrupt you for a second?
Sure.
Now that we're here, that reminds me, because you just said Donovan Dijak. I assume you were in the room when that name was, or you were at least in the text message thread when that name was conceived. I have a sneaking theory that it was you who came up with Donovan. Is that accurate?
Yes. I
knew
it.
I knew it.
I pitched it to Tarzan.
Yeah.
Yes, and
you're the creator of Donovan, not Dijak, but Donovan.
Yes.
Dijak is my real last name, but Donovan is not. So thank you very much. It's done me very, very well. I love the alliteration.
Yes. Well, I mean. I think at the time, Ryback was getting a huge push, and to me, Ryback, and if we were just going to call you Dijak, you needed something, or people just think you're a Ryback ripoff. So
I agree.
We went with Donovan Dijak.
Yep, and probably half of the promoters in the Northeast disagree with you and just call me Dijak anyway, which I despise, by the way. I hate being called just Dijak. I love it in real life. I like because it works. I can use it at work. I can use it with my family. Not my family. They don't call me Dijak, but I can use it with the boys. I can use it with anyone, but in the ring, I prefer to be Donovan Dijak. It just sounds better to me.
I like the one promotion. I don't even know what promotion it is, where it's all capital letters. Every time your name, it's all capital. Dijak, all capital letters.
Honestly, that's happened a few times. I think probably most prominently at Northeast Wrestling.
Maybe it's an acronym. Is Dijak an acronym?
Which I would understand because I'm a tall guy. I'm a big guy on the indies. So I can understand the thought process. Here's Dijak, the intimidating, one name monster or whatever it happened. But I don't wrestle like that at all. I'm very much a human being with emotions, and I wrestle probably smaller than I probably should. So I'm definitely not this intimidating monster coming into the ring. I laugh. I joke around sometimes. Sometimes I'm angry. Sometimes So to me, it doesn't work, but some promoters like it a lot. So they'll continue to do it, and it is what it is.
So, yeah, we're talking about your beginnings here in wrestling, and you started out in 2013 with Brian Fury, as I mentioned, at the New England Pro Wrestling Academy. What brought you there? After college, right? You were done with college, and then you decided, why not wrestling? How'd you come to that?
There was a little lull, I suppose, in my life. 2010-11 is when I finished up at Bridgewater State. I did 5 years total of football, one of which was at UMass Amherst. But 4 years at Bridgewater, 4 years of basketball at Bridgewater, including a graduate year. So I think I got my graduate degree in like 2011, late 2010, early 2011, something like that. So once I finished that up, for the first time in my adult life anyway, I had my weeknights and weekends sort of free. while I was looking for a full-time job, I also, had a void to fill because I didn't have basketball or football practice or training or anything like that. I would still play pickup basketball at the gym or whatever, but I had, for the most part, I had my nights free. So I started watching the pro wrestling product again, mostly WWE and TNA. But, they had enough program for me to watch every single night, so I had something to do every night. I started getting more invested in the program. And then once I got the full-time job, I still had my nights free, so I continued being a fan. In one night in particular, I'll try to keep this story a little short because it's long and I've told it many times. But the gist of it is that my now fiance, soon to be wife, maybe by the time this is released, probably a wife, sort of got us kicked out of our original gym, Best Fitness in Nashua, New Hampshire. So we decided to relocate to Gold's Gym also in Nashua, New Hampshire. I, for some reason, was researching the manager of that Gold's Gym. I Googled Gold's Gym manager, Nashua, New Hampshire. One of the first articles that popped up was an article about Triple H, a.k.a. Paul Levesque, who at the time was, when he was a younger lad, he's originally born and raised in Nashua, New Hampshire, and he managed a Gold's Gym in Nashua, New Hampshire. I don't think it was the same Gold's Gym, but maybe it was. I think it was. Was it? Yeah. Was that an old Gold's Gym up there on Exit 8, whatever it is? It isn't? No. Yeah, I went to Triple H's gym. It doesn't exist anymore now. It's like a fitness lab or something.
Oh, really?
Hanson was telling me about that the other day because he lives up near there. Anyway, so I Googled it. That brought me, or that article said that he trained in Malden, Massachusetts. Also, ironically, at the time on the exact same street I was working on, Pleasant Street in Malden, Massachusetts.
Oh, really?
Yes. Huh. Oh, did you visit the old?
I did,
Kowalski?
Yeah. And actually, I lived right on Washington Street, which is right off of Pleasant, too.
Yeah. I worked. Here's another little funny story that I don't think I've ever told anyone. I used to work at the Committee for Public Counsel Services on Pleasant Street, 6 Pleasant Street, if I'm not mistaken. It's like a little government building right on the corner there of Pleasant Street. And I got fired from that job because I attended an AJ Styles seminar in Binghamton, New York for 2CW. And
they just weren't an AJ Styles fan?
They were not only not an AJ Styles fan, they were no longer a fan of me because I got fired from that job because I said, in my defense, I had like a ton of vacation days that I hadn't used, and I just forgot to use one that day. So I was like, oh, crap. Can I swear on this?
Oh, yeah, go for it.
Okay. So I was like, oh, shit. It's the day of the seminar. I said, I'm going to this AJ Styles seminar. I want to get booked to 2CW. I'm going to go to the seminar and I'll just say I'm taking a sick day or whatever it happens to be. And then I stupidly tweeted about it. And apparently they were on my Twitter and they saw that. So in my defense, if I just remembered to use a vacation day, I had plenty of those. So it wasn't like I was lying and stealing company money. I had vacation days. And I said, look, I have vacation days. You could use 10 of them for all I care,
Or if you weren't just flaunting it on social media for the world to see.
Yeah, back when my Twitter handle was @Chris Dijak because I didn't even have the Donovan moniker yet. So apparently they were following me or something. So all 100 of my followers saw that wonderful tweet, which ended up working out for the best because I after that I got the job that I'm at right now, which is very flexible and allowing me to work a part-time schedule while I professionally wrestle on the weekends, which is great. Gives me something to do during the weeks and everything. Where was my story going? So I found the Kowalski's website, which linked me to the CTC website, which linked me to the New England Pro Wrestling Academy website
in North Andover, Massachusetts.
The great town of North Andover, Massachusetts.
So what was it like training over there?
It's a lot of people say it's intimidating. At first, intimidating wouldn't be the phrase I would use, especially because I have so much experience at high level football. People's jobs and lives are on the line, so they're screaming and hollering and losing their mind about everything, and every step and inch you take is criticized and critiqued. So from that aspect, I wasn't intimidated per se, but you could definitely tell that Fury was intense. His passion, his drive for his students to succeed was unparalleled. So I appreciated that. I definitely bought into to the fact that he wasn't just there to play around, and that's something a lot of pro wrestling trainers don't really do. I've scoured the world. I've gone from country to country training at all sorts of different places, and a lot of places you find that they understand that a lot of pro wrestling fans who show up to train and maybe aren't necessarily built for the business, they want to keep them there because they're paying money to be there.
Right.
So they'll cater to them. Oh, you're doing well, you're doing fine. Because that's human nature. People want to hear that they're doing good, or when they hear from someone or somewhere that they're doing well, then they're all excited and they want to keep coming back. Fury doesn't do that. People get weeded out fairly quickly at the New England Pro Wrestling Academy because he'll tell them that they're not doing well and that they need to change things. And a lot of human beings don't like to hear that. But the honest truth is, if you don't like hearing that, then you're probably not cut out for the pro wrestling business, because if you can't take criticism, I'm not going to say there's not a spot for you, because there's plenty of guys in pro wrestling who can't take criticism, but they end up not getting better. That's the nature of it. And I think that's probably one of, if not the most important thing I got from playing sports, is that if you're in sports, you're always trying to get better. It doesn't matter how good you are. Even if you're LeBron James and you're the best, you still go to practice and you still look for critique from your coaches, because there's always room for improvement. If you're not getting better, you're getting worse. And for some reason, pro wrestling, that doesn't apply to most people. They feel like they reach a point and they don't need to train anymore. They don't need to get better, But there's such a group of guys who work like 3 times a year, and they think they're at this level where they've reached like the pinnacle of pro wrestling, and they don't need to train to get better. And I guess that's just human nature for some people, but it's definitely not what Brian Fury allows. And I would rank him amongst the top trainers in the world, realistically speaking. And but definitely easily the most underrated trainer, I think, in all of pro wrestling.
Yeah, well, it's kind of funny, because one of the things when I was I had trained there for a bit with Fury, and the one thing I always talked about was back when guys broke in the 70s and 80s and stuff, aside from their training, but once they actually started working, they were working 6 and 7 nights a week.
Oh yeah,
that doesn't exist anymore unless you are with WWE.
Right.
That's it. And so going to wrestling class is of vital importance, because even if you're wrestling Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, that's only 3 nights a week. So if you go and get 2 extra nights a week, the more you're in the ring, the more you're better. So that's amazing from a very young point you picked up on that,
especially early on. I mean, if you're in your first 2 or 3 years, I mean, that's when you're creating habits. That's when you're molding what and who you want to be. I think then especially you need to be in the ring as much as possible. Just for muscle memory's sake, if nothing else. I mean, maybe once you get 5 or 6 years in, if you're a good worker, you're working 3, maybe max 4 times a week, something like that. That might be enough, especially if it's against like really good competition. But anything less than that, you can maintain, but I don't think you're going to get better, in my opinion. But that's a basketball, it's a football mentality. We'd practice 5 days a week. We'd have games the other days. And I played 2 sports all the way through college, so there was never an off season for me. Maybe physically I'm regretting it now, but it definitely creates a mindset, for lack of a better word, a mentality that constantly need to be improving. That's another thing, is that a lot of guys, they're taught, you need to get feedback. You need to ask guys for feedback, which is fine if you don't. But a lot of guys ask for feedback and they only want to hear positive things, which always bugged me.
It's such bullshit.
I'll literally, I don't ask a lot of guys for feedback, which is definitely a fault of mine. I've shared, I was just in a locker room with Kurt Angle, and I meant to ask him for feedback, and I didn't, because I don't know, I always feel like I'm annoying guys, so I don't want to like bug people, which is definitely a fault of mine, and I wish I were better about it. But when I do ask guys for feedback, I always ask like Handsome for feedback. He was one of the guys who helped originally train me, so I trust that he's going to be honest with me. I know that he's experienced. And even him, when I ask him for feedback, I don't say, "Hey man, did you see my match? What did you think?" Because to me that's just asking for a bunch of compliments. Like, hey man, put me over, tell me how good I am. I'll specifically ask guys like, "Oh, what didn't you like? What?" Because that's the basketball mentality. That's the football mentality. You got to find out what you did wrong so you can fix that. I'm disinterested in what I did right. I know what I did right because the crowd cheered when I did something right, or whatever reaction I was looking for. That's what happened and what I got. So I know when I did something right. I need to know the details of what I did wrong. And so that's what I specifically ask guys for. And I don't feel like a lot of guys do that nowadays. I think a lot of people are just fishing for compliments.
You're exactly right. You got the guys who, they just want to be told what they're doing right, or they don't really give a shit. It's just like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to do.
Right. I'm supposed to shake everybody's hand. I'm supposed to ask the vets for feedback.
And it becomes this like the moment you'll know, and you'll probably think of like a couple people when I say this. What did you think? Well, you could have done this a little better. Yeah, I just do this for fun anyways. So,
Well, here's what I was thinking. I'm like, oh, cool. I'm glad you asked me for feedback so you could tell me what your thought process was. No, man, you're right.
Well, speaking of trainers, you were around a lot of great trainers pretty early on because you went down to Florida for a WWE tryout, like a week camp, pretty early on in your career. How early was that?
It wasn't a week camp. It was
okay.
It was only like 3 days. I think they might do weeks now. I don't know. So I started. I did my first fantasy camp at the New England Pro Wrestling Academy in September of 2012. I had to save up money to afford the tuition. So my brother loaned me the money. So I started selling advertising dog food at Petco. So I picked up a second job in order to be able to afford pro wrestling training. So I started the training in I think early October or something like that. And then it wasn't that long because when I started, my thought process was, I'm a bigger guy. I'm a tall guy. I'm going to send my stuff to WWE as soon as I possibly can, and I'm going to get signed by WWE, and that'll be it.
Which isn't too outlandish a theory, especially like back then when they were taking guys off the street just because they're big and tall.
Back then, yeah, it was definitely I'd say it was in the beginning of the transition to where they kind of are now, which is they still like bigger guys, but for the most part, especially if you're an indie guy, it doesn't matter too much what your size is. But yeah, definitely back then it was still there was still the remnants of the old WWE code, which was 6'2", 240 and you're in, and I was 6'5", 250, so in my head I was definitely in. Which wasn't the case. Out of my tryout, ironically, the guys who got signed were Chad Gable, who's obviously doing very well right now, and Sonny something. I don't even know what his work name is, but he just debuted on the Authors of Pain, that thing. Because they didn't sign him, and then he went and did the Olympics or something, and then got a gold medal or something, and then they signed him, and then he started training, and then he debuted as one of those.
Get a gold medal, you got to sign.
Right, you got to sign the gold medal. So I think him, and then there might have been one other guy who was like a big amateur wrestler type. So lots of amateur wrestlers at that tryout camp. Some of them Olympians, and some of them, obviously got signed. I was not one of them. I did not get signed. But yeah, so I contacted WWE really early on. I think late December, early January, 2012 to 2013. I contacted them. I got a response in January that said that they wanted to bring me in for a tryout camp. It was the final tryout camp at the old FCW in Tampa. It was right before they built Performance Center.
It's funny, Todd Hansen, he went to the first one at the Performance Center.
Correct.
So, yeah.
They actually asked me which one I wanted to go to. He said, "Do you want to go to this one?" I didn't know it was going to be at Performance Center, but he said, "Do you want to go to this one in June, which will be mostly amateur athletes and Olympic athletes and stuff, or do you want to go to this one in August, let's say?" I don't know exactly what month it was, but this one in August, which will be more indie wrestlers. And I was green as hell at the time, so I'm like, I don't want to be the one with indie wrestlers. I'm gonna be totally exposed. I'll go to the one with athletes. Like, I know. And I ended up doing fairly well because all it was like blow up drills and in ring stuff. And even this is the funny story that I like to tell a lot of the trainees at the school is I was in the ring with a bunch of literally Olympic caliber athletes, and most of them were getting blown to smithereens because being in the ring is a very specific skill set that even if you're the greatest athlete on earth, you can't just step into a pro wrestling ring and knock out the blow up drills because they're hard. They're hard as hell. The only guys who, for the most part, did about as well as I did or better than me were the guys who ended up getting signed. Like Gable just took right to it. He was killing the blow up drills, but for the most part, Olympic caliber athletes, ex-NFL players, they're all getting blown to smithereens because it's really hard to hit the ropes and have that footwork that you need to get up and down and jump over the ropes and whatever else the hell they had us do. But yeah, so I agreed to that. So they also told me they wanted me to do TV. So ironically, my first match was in a WWE ring right before SmackDown in Hershey, Pennsylvania.
Before the doors opened, right?
Before the doors opened, yes. It was not a dark match. It was just the tryout match beforehand. So yeah, that's sort of how my progression into that camp started. I kind of got to the camp by going through Jerry Briscoe, who's normally known for being an amateur wrestling scout.
Mm-hmm.
I obviously have but I have no amateur wrestling background whatsoever. My background's in football and basketball. So he wanted me to gain a lot of weight, so I was gaining weight for that camp. I had a lot of issues going into that camp. I ended up tearing my right pectoral muscle in a training seminar a month beforehand, so I was doing extensive rehab while I was going there. It was a whole barrel of fun, basically, is what it boils down to.
So I'm curious because we've seen, you've been around long enough now to see guys go there, get turned down. And I'm always interested because I think at the time, I don't know how much interacting we were doing at this point in time. Probably not a whole hell of a lot. But what was your mindset coming out of that? So you went there, you kind of coming out of the gate. You seems like you put like all your eggs into that basket. Like what is your mindset coming out of that now? Because obviously you've adapted now and doing pretty damn well for yourself. But
thankfully, I didn't get the go kill yourself response that I hear a lot of guys get. The hey man, burn your boots and don't ever call back. I didn't get that response. I've been steadily getting the there's always next year kid for 3 years now. So we'll see if there is next year at some point. But yeah, I so the doors always remained open, which is fine. In my head, I guess I justified it as, well, if this route isn't going to work for me, then I'm gonna make sure that I figure it out somehow. I'm gonna dedicate myself to figuring this out. And at that point, I mean, I'm 9 months in, so at that point, I had already grown a love for pro wrestling. I had if you contacted me on day one, it was probably WWE or bust. Once I'm 9 months in and I go to the tryout camp, I mean, I'd picked up a second job. I'd made so many sacrifices at that point. I'd done ring crew. I'd been amongst the boys forever. I'd been training 3-4 times a week. I've been killing myself, busting my ass, killing myself, busting my ass. So at that point, I'm in love with pro wrestling. So I go to this tryout and they tell me to go, it's not, they didn't tell me to go pound sand, but they say, oh, you're not what we're looking for right now. That's not going to stop me. I'm not going to say, oh, well, that's it, because at that point I'm already in love with pro wrestling. It's something I'd already dedicated my life to at that point. So I said, okay, I'm going to succeed somewhere else and I'm going to prove them wrong. So that from that aspect, it's definitely, I understand some other guys, I've obviously we've all heard the story of the guy who works and finally gets that big break and goes to the tryout and then gets told no, and then they want to go play in the street or something. they never want to see a pro wrestling ring again. That I understand because you work hard and you work hard. I didn't work that hard to get there. I mean, obviously I worked hard, but first time they saw me, this guy's tall, let's bring him in for a camp or whatever. So it wasn't like I was in some horrible dark place. They said no, fine. I'm sure I'll have other opportunities in the future. It's fine. There's other companies. I think I went to a ROH camp maybe 3 months after that. So and I've been incredibly fortunate. It's not lost on me what other guys had to go through in the world of professional wrestling before I got in it. I understand that I obviously got an opportunity that I didn't deserve because of the way that I looked, and I it's also not lost on me that other guys, you know, they like some guys will hear me talking about it, brushing aside the WWE opportunity. That's not what I'm trying to do, because I understand the nuances of how professional wrestling has developed, especially on the independent level over the past 10 years. I get that back maybe in 2004, 2005, that if you got a shot, like that was it, and if it didn't work out, like it was like Ring of Honor wasn't an option, you know, like there was no traveling overseas. I understand that, and I'm lucky in that sense that it's 2016, or at the time it was 2014, and pro wrestling was moving in that direction where guys like me could have the opportunity to wrestle at a Beyond Wrestling, you know, and have the whereas 10 years ago in New England, if you wanted to work, you know, good high quality wrestling matches, you had maybe one or two options. Now I've got 5 or 6 options. Now I can go to different places, and places can afford to. Not saying I didn't make financial sacrifices. I did. I made a lot of them, but it's right now is a perfect storm on the independent scene, and that's not lost on me. I understand that things would be a lot different if it were 10, 15 years ago, and that I'm incredibly fortunate to have the opportunities that I have on both in terms of my height, my size, my look, whatever it happens to be, that gets me the tryouts and opportunities, both combined with the fact that I can even pursue the opportunities, because a lot of these are opportunities that didn't exist 10 years ago. You know, like ROH has tryout camps now where you can go to be seen. Whereas 10 years ago, I don't know how the hell you got into ROH. You probably had to know a guy who knew a guy. You probably had to be in the business for 10 years and know Gabe Sapolsky's daughter's son's brother, for all I know. You know, it's and with the progression of YouTube and with the progression of Facebook Messenger, I mean, these are all things that didn't exist 10 years ago. And I just happen to be lucky that now is the time I got into professional wrestling, because I've benefited greatly from all of those things, and I think that's why guys are able to progress the way that they are now. I mean, a guy like me, or a guy like Leo Rush, for example, you know, who's only been wrestling 2 years, a guy like Moose. I mean, granted, Moose was in the NFL, so maybe it's a little different. Or a guy like Matt Riddle, who was in UFC, you know, they progress a little quicker because, you know, maybe they're given some more opportunities. But I mean, the same goes for me because I'm a taller guy. But I think in this day and age, you're allowed to progress quicker just because you're allowed more opportunities, because it's just the way that things have fallen into place. You know, a guy like Leo Rush is able to be on Ring of Honor. He's not even like 2 years in the business. I mean, that has something to do with the fact that you can go to these camps, that you can send people your matches on YouTube. You can get booked in Delaware, Florida, wherever, by sending stuff. I was booked in WXW in Mineola, Florida. I probably wasn't a year into the business, and I was traveling to Florida. That's not something I don't think that occurred even 5 years ago, because how the hell were you going to get your, you know, what do you, like, send a tape to some random address that you got from some guy? Like, I just feel like it's different now in today's day and age. So I've been fortunate in that aspect. Do I think if it were a different time that I wouldn't have pursued it? I think I would have anyway, because that's how much I loved pro wrestling and I loved being in the ring and whatever. But do I think I would be in the spot I am right now, at the level I am right now? No, absolutely not. I don't think I would be even close, to be completely honest.
It's refreshing you have that perspective, because as somebody who spent the predominance of my in-ring career during the kind of time you were talking about, like, oh my God, it's a different climate. I mean, when I first broke in, it was like the days of, like, I mean, now I feel like a company pops up, they put up a ring, and there's 100 or more people there by accident.
It's true.
I mean, Mike can attest to this. How many times do we work in front of crowds of, I mean, at one point, the Chaotic, which now regularly draws 200 or so plus, I mean, 125, 130 was a good night. And you'd work all these shows where it's friends and family. I worked a show. They allowed us to have a comp, and there was literally nobody paid. So I made Steph, my girlfriend at the time, now wife, I made her pay because there was literally no paid fans at this show, and there was no money to be made. There was one place, WWE. That was it. So this renaissance is amazing.
I actually had. I was at the very end of that. My beginning days were like the conclusion of that time period, which I think is also good for me in terms of perspective, because I can remember I've also worked shows in front of zero people that didn't pay, and so for me to literally see like the grassroots seed planting progression of what it's turned into today, where everyone's on the independent level anyway, and I guess WWE too is benefiting from it, and to see this uprise in social media and YouTube and people being able to watch and the on-demand accounts, those things where like every company has an on-demand account now that you're paying money for to see. So I think it's good that I was able to get the perspective of that, especially like coming up in the business. I mean, as a green kid in 2012 to really have to work and hustle to make, $15 or whatever it happened to be, I think benefited me, but not as much as the whole progression of how everything's gone over the past 4 years has obviously benefited everyone.
So leaving that tryout camp, you went back, chaotic wrestling, became the chaotic wrestling champion, and did all these indies all over, like you're saying. How did the ROH opportunity come up?
I mean, I was going to I guess that's another benefit of the way I guess my perspective coming into wrestling, because I started when I was 25. Most guys start when they're 18, so they're just kids. In my opinion, they're just kids. I was a dumb kid at 18, and most people are. 25, still dumb, but less of a kid. I had a little bit more perspective, so I knew my clock was ticking. Even right now, I know my clock's ticking. I'm 29 now, and how many years do you have left in pro wrestling? If I'm lucky, maybe 10. If I'm really lucky, maybe 15, So I knew I had to get the ball rolling. So I was trying everything. I've done tryout matches for Evolve. I've done tryout matches for CZW. I did every Ring of Honor camp. To me, the camps, especially as a green guy coming up in the business, those were seminars and camps, and especially tryout camps were no brainers to me, because those are the I want to use the word free, even though they cost money,
right?
Because they're the opportunities where they can't say no. There's plenty of people, like I could send out, and I got said no to a million fucking times. I sent out more email. That's the thing, is I think people in pro wrestling are afraid to get told no, which always struck me as strange. Because I especially coming up in sports, I was constantly told no. I sent out letters to every college in the world, I think, to try to get recruited. Almost all of them didn't respond. Some of them did and said no. The 3 that did respond were like UMass, BC, Syracuse, and then like a couple of like Maine and Brown or whatever. So
not to be bragging or anything.
They're the and not a brag, because Syracuse and BC, I went to both of their camps and they told me to go fly a kite. And then UMass offered me a partial scholarship. Maine offered me a full scholarship, but that was Maine. I don't know if you've ever been to Maine or no. That place is
sure have.
Woof.
Oh boy, our listeners in Maine are angry right now.
They're not that angry, because my official visit to the University of Maine in Orono was I want to say January 16th or something like that, which it was cold. It was very, very cold, and there was nobody on campus because they were on winter break, so it was not a positive experience. But anyway, I got denied from so many places in that, so I learned that you're not going to get any opportunities that you don't ask for. So I asked everybody in pro wrestling, and I got told no constantly. It's so funny to me going back now that I because now I'm pro wrestling's my full-time job, so now I have to treat it like a full-time job. So I have to hustle looking for jobs. I have openings. I got to fill these openings. I got to, weigh prices and costs and stuff. So I'm doing all that. And I message some of these people, and because I see they have an opening or whatever, and then right above that, because Facebook Messenger saves every message you've ever sent in its cache history or whatever.
Right.
And some of them I'll have messages from 2014, 2013, 2012, just me sending out matches for forever. It was me and you from Lowell. It was me and Brian Malone. It's from Lowell. It was legitimately the first match I ever had that wasn't like a squash match or like a weird against like a weird you were the best opponent I had wrestled.
All right, I like this guy
to that very point. So
did I get you any bookings at least?
No, almost
son of a bitch,
almost none, because I was sending it to everyone. I didn't care. There was no reservation. I'd send it to.
Funny, I was getting a lot of calls about this time.
I sent I sent that match to Dreamwave, to PWG, to VIP, to freelance, to every company across wherever, to Evolve, to CZW. I'd send it anywhere because I didn't care. They'd look at it, they'd say, "Oh, this guy's green, he stinks, I'm not booking him." They'd either ignore it or say no. All right, that's fine. So to me, the camps and the pay to have a dark match, those were the easiest choices I could make because, well, they can't say no. I'm paying them to say yes.
Right.
So once I get in front of them, they'll see, oh, maybe he doesn't suck so bad. Maybe he's got potential or whatever it happens to be. And the best part is they would run them, periodically so I could keep going back. So yeah, I started with Chaotic. I must have done my first ROH camp, I think. It was definitely 2013. Yeah, it was 2013, late 2013. So I'd only been on shows for maybe 3 months. And I remember telling them that, and they were flabbergasted. I remember specifically Hunter, the Delirious. I remember specifically he was impressed with how I worked the hard cam, which was something that was always a fundamental that was pushed at the school. Obviously, they didn't. I wasn't ready to be in Ring of Honor the first time. The second time was like February of 2014. So they put me on. What was that show?
Future of Honor?
Future of Honor 2, yep, against Moose. It was that summer. And then...
So that was almost like a developmental show that Ring of Honor put on.
Yes.
In Delaware, I think?
Laurel, Delaware, yep.
Yeah. So you and Moose.
Yeah, we broke the ring. Moose was...
Should have reinforced the ring for that one.
Moose was heavier at the time. I was heavier at the time. He just hit the ropes. It might have been the first time he'd ever hit the ropes in a match, by the power of someone else. I'm sure he did. He runs into the ropes himself, but
right.
I don't know who he'd wrestled before that, but for the first time in our lives, we had someone else our size to sort of wrestle. So we did plenty of whip reversals and whatever happened to show up at the time. And one of them, he hit the ropes and it just snapped the top rope. It didn't snap, but it made that big loud clinging noise.
Right.
And then all of a sudden the ropes looked like wet noodles.
Yeah.
So that didn't stop me from doing my backflip off the second rope, which I didn't get yelled at, but I got a Hunter gave me a talk in the back, you can't be doing backflips off of broken ropes. So that was an early lesson.
Had to get your shit in though.
That was an early lesson in it doesn't matter that this is ROH. You still need to wrestle smart, sort of mindset. So yeah, that happened. I still again every opportunity I had to show up and do ring crew and be seen, to me those were. And I was green at the time, so those were easy, no-brainer choices. I'm gonna do ring crew for anyone who's willing to let me. I did ring crew for Evolve, CZW, ROH a million times, Chikara a million times, because I wanted one of these companies to invest in me. I wanted one of them to take a chance and say, this kid's green and he kind of sucks, but he's working his ass off and he's got potential. So eventually ROH took that chance on me with the Top Prospect tournament. I found out about that in late 2014. I was booked for early 2015, and I ended up winning the Top Prospect tournament. I got a good string of opponents. I was able to string together a bunch of good matches, and they ended up signing me. So that's where I've been for the past year and a half plus now.
that last match, the finals, it was at the ECW arena, right?
Yep.
Would you consider that one of your favorites, like a highlight for you?
It was definitely special. It's funny. You go back and watch it. I hate going back and watching old matches. Like anything more than like 4 months, because I'm only 4 years into my career now. From the day I stepped foot in a pro wrestling ring was around or a little more than 4 months ago or 4 years ago. So that's not very long. So I'm even today I'm still progressing at kind of a rapid rate, especially considering now I'm every time I wrestle I get to wrestle someone really good. Like last week I got to wrestle Matt Cross, and that was kind of like it kind of gets lost on you like when I have good opponents every single week. Like world-class opponent. I mean, he's like a premier guy on Lucha Underground, and it almost gets lost in the shuffle, and it's crazy that I'm able to wrestle such quality opponents every week. But yeah, even if I watch a match from like 4 or 5 months ago, I watch it and I go, oh, this isn't good, and this isn't good, and this isn't good. Even though they're matches that at the time I was like the greatest match of my life, and I had the crowd rocking and rolling. So that match in particular, I probably haven't watched in a year or two. Well, not two; it's less than 2 years ago. But I probably haven't watched it in a year, just because I'll look at the fundamentals and like gag because they'll make me sick. But the feeling from that night, because it's funny. It's funny wrestling in front of a crowd who's seen you before, as opposed to a crowd who's never seen you before. And I know Sami Zayn touched upon this recently, that he's sad that he'll never be able to wrestle a match ever again in front of a crowd that doesn't know who he is, because there's something so special about showing up in front of people who've never seen you before, and you just walk out to silence and you go, oh, these people aren't going to be silent when I leave, and then you're able to just wow them with all your stuff, and your stuff's so original and whatever it happens to be, and they're all so impressed and they're on their feet. So it's almost like it's a fine balance between going out dry in front of a crowd who's never seen you before, as opposed to going out in front of a crowd where you're established and over in front of. Because on the one hand, if they've never seen you, you can impress them with all sorts of new shit. But if you're over, then it's almost harder to figure out which reaction is genuine and which one is like, that's our guy. Like I'm actually going through this right now at Beyond, because I've had so many quality opponents there that it feels like I've had like 10 matches in a row or whatever, which have been really good. So the crowd is really invested in me. So at this point, I go out to wrestle matches, and they're already, the second my music hits, they're losing their minds. They're chanting my name the whole time. So I don't know whether anything I'm doing is good or not, because I feel like I could just go in the ring and just like start hula hooping, and they'd start losing their minds about it, which is kind of a disservice to me, because I need the criticism from the fans just as much as I need it from the trainers and the wrestlers in the back. So it's a fine balance between that and going out there in front of people who don't know who you are and don't care who you are and won't give you the time of day and aren't even paying attention to anything you're doing. So yeah, long story short, that match in my memory holds a very special place, because it was the first time I really captured a crowd. They were really invested. It obviously got me a job. Will's obviously a tremendous opponent. We've had some of our best matches against one another. But yeah, I'm probably not going to go back and watch the full match ever again, because it'll look gross to me.
So you talked about Beyond Wrestling and all the quality opponents you've had there. What do you think about Beyond overall, the presentation, being a part of it? What does that mean to you?
I sent Dru Cordero a message. I don't think I've ever told anyone this, actually.
Oh, inside stuff.
Inside stuff,
you
yes.
It's exclusive.
They had a show. I want to say Adam Cole was booked, and something happened with the ring or something like that. No, there was like a shooting outside of the place, outside of Fat.
Oh yeah,
Music.
I remember that. Yeah,
and they had to shut down. They had to cancel the show. He lost his ass because I think he paid everyone regardless. So he was out of money. They didn't know if they were going to have another show. I remember sending him a message. I was trying to make good with the booker or whatever. But I genuinely meant what I sent him, which was that this area needs Beyond Wrestling. Because at the time, we had Chaotic Wrestling, and we had Top Rope kind of, and we had NECW sort of, and XWA kind of on the rise. But really, if you wanted like good quality opponents for me at the time, all I had was Chaotic. Top Rope was giving me some bookings, and I had, I was getting okay opponents at other places, but Chaotic was kind of it. And Chaotic had a very unique style. Not unique. Unique's the wrong word. It had a very
corporate.
That's what I want to say. I want to say WWE corporate. I was going to say like formulaic, if that makes sense. But it was very much that WWE larger than life, make everything count, make the most out of everything. So to me, that was a good thing, but we needed more, especially in the area, because the way the indies were going and the way that a lot of places had super indies and you had to wrestle a certain style to get flown places and whatever it happened to be, we didn't exactly have that in the area. So I messaged him and I told him, I said, hey man, I please let me know if there's anything I can do to help you out, whatever you need, because I know I don't work for Beyond Wrestling, but like this area needs Beyond Wrestling. Because we had the other parts covered. We had the quote unquote WWE feeder system companies covered. We needed that style of wrestling in this area. And to this day, I still believe that we need that style of wrestling in this area because it's becoming infectious. Now, because of the success Beyond's had, XWA is having more success like that. XWA existed for a long time, but I don't know what they were like before, but I assume it was less like they are now.
Well, Brian is the last one half of the last XWA tag team champions.
So you worked there. Were they like an indie kind of company before Beyond was?
They were like they were more like a chaotic type thing. It was basically all like the pretty much any
and maybe like a big name.
Any like decent company around pretty much used the same mix of probably 10 or 15 guys.
Right.
And I will say, me and Max Bauer have probably been the XWA tag team champions for like 13 years now. So
maybe he'll bring you back.
Maybe
he is bringing you back though, right? We just discussed this.
Wait a minute here. Hold on.
Uh-oh. Insider information alert. But yeah, now those companies are bringing in more guys. They're bringing in the Air Foxes, the Paul Londons of the world. JT Dunn's doing very well for himself, even though he's a local guy. So Blitzkrieg Pro Wrestling is starting to take more to that style. So it's infectious, Chaotic is starting to build more like that. And I know you had a large part in that happening, Brian. So it's and to me, that's benefiting everyone. That benefits everyone. It's more money for everyone. It's more visibility for everyone. So the fact that Beyond Wrestling was able to get back on their feet is both a testament to Dru Cordero and a luxury to guys like myself who've obviously benefited tremendously from Beyond Wrestling specifically.
Let's go back to Ring of Honor. You got this big match coming up September 30th, Lowell, Massachusetts, right down the street from where you started training. All-Star Extravaganza 8, Ring of Honor pay-per-view. You and Bobby Fish for the TV title. You consider this your biggest match?
Technically, this is a spoiler alert because Bobby Fish versus Shibata is on television this week. Spoiler alert: Bobby Fish wins.
Well, it's been announced on the website.
They announced it on the website under the context of spoiler alert.
Oh, I see.
So you ruined it for all of you.
Oh my God!
You ruined ROH TV this week.
I'm never getting Ring of Honor now.
No.
Yeah, could you hold off on that? I mean, I got a big opportunity here coming up with Ring of Honor. Could you hold off on spoiling their television program, Mike? Are you trying to? Is that what you're trying to do? You're trying to make sure I'm stuck here on this podcast with you forever?
Yeah, I can't do this alone.
I apologize. What was the final question of the Bobby Fish?
Do you feel like this is your biggest match in Ring of Honor? Pay-per-view, TV
it's
title?
The biggest match of my career, not just in Ring of Honor. Yeah, without question. Bobby Fish, such a high-caliber opponent. Lowell, Massachusetts, more or less my hometown. I mean, I lived in Tingsboro for so long, which is right on the Lowell border. It's where I made my Chaotic debut, which was probably my second match ever or something like that. It's where I wrestled a ton of really important matches, including against Brian Malone, including one where I wrestled. I know he wanted to get to this story. I wrestled Chase Del Monte in Lowell, Massachusetts, and I bled like a stuck pig all over the Lowell PAV. I christened it with my blood while my lovely. This was before fiance. My lovely girlfriend at the time, I think, was in attendance.
You had just gotten engaged.
I had just gotten engaged, had I? Oh my goodness.
Do you want me to tell you how I know how?
Please.
So Dijak's bleeding all over the place. I would say your girlfriend, though, probably not like an unreasonable reaction.
No,
because I'm guessing Ashley's not a huge wrestling fan.
She's not a pro wrestling fan.
Yes.
So for everyone who's listening to this is probably a pro wrestling fan. Imagine you're not a pro wrestling fan, and the love of your life is bleeding profusely in a scene like where do you see a Crimson Mask? If you're not a pro wrestling fan, where do you see Crimson Mask? In like a war movie?
Maybe.
Like someone who just got their head blown off. Like
it wasn't a little bit of blood.
Yeah, that's the only time you see like a lot of blood. So this is the love of her life bleeding profusely. She has no idea whether it's scripted, whether I'm as most people know, it's not scripted. I did not intend for that to happen. I was accidentally bleeding profusely from the head, and she was not happy about it.
No, so she's backstage now, and like things have diffused a little bit. You're back, the match is over, you're getting cleaned up or whatever, and I think she was talking to Jamie, and I can see the angst on her face. So I'm just trying to like help now. I'm just trying to like make small talk or whatever, get her mind off of the fact that you may have just died. So I go, oh my god, I haven't said congratulations, and she looks at me and goes, I'm not worried about that right now, or something to that effect. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna walk in the other room now.
My fiance, soon to be wife, next week is a very the first word that comes to mind is abrasive, but that's not exactly true, because she's actually a real sweetheart, and she like bakes cookies and stuff for the whole locker room now, so everybody loves her. But when she's unhappy, you're very much aware of it, and she was not happy that night. I think she scolded Jamie. She cornered like Jamie, and who was the booker? Were you the booker at the time?
Yeah, it was me and Tarzan. I think Tarzan was back at that point.
Chase, she definitely cornered Chase and Jamie.
I didn't. The only wrath I got was when I tried to like, continue diffusing the situation, which was, and again, I adore your girl, or your soon to be wife.
Yes.
Like she's a wonderful woman, and I enjoy talking to her. And when she found out I was leaving Chaotic, she had very nice things to say about me.
Yep.
But wow, yeah,
she was not happy. She was not happy. Just I didn't see this part. I just heard about it from Chase and Jamie, that she cornered them, scolding them. I mean, in her defense, they probably kind of deserved it. Maybe Chase definitely deserved it, because Chase hit me with the wrong side of a trash can lid, and that's what busted me open in a show where the expectation is no blood, no cursing,
no blood, no cursing.
We all know all the rules. But so my bleeding was definitely his fault. She was mad at Jamie for not stopping the match, which there's an argument to be made that he probably should have stopped that match on a show in front of a bunch of children. I'm happy he didn't, because it ended up being a big moment for me, and I became this martyr or whatever. So I'm happy he didn't. But in hindsight, as a promoter of a show in front of children, where we advertise a PG atmosphere, I was bleeding pretty bad.
I may have had a hand in that match not getting stopped.
That's why now I know
I may have had a hand in that match.
That's why I know he's defending
stopped.
it. Rich Palladino would have words with you as well, because I bled a pool of blood, probably the size of maybe 3 basketballs, right in front of his son, who was visibly disturbed by it, and he was not happy with me because of that.
Hey, you know what? That shit happens. It's pro wrestling.
Listen.
Like,
you don't have to. You know, I wasn't
happens.
mad about it, but she definitely was, and
Yes,
Rich
was.
wasn't thrilled either. So yeah, Lowell obviously has a huge importance to me. I'm not
here's
sure.
The question is Ashley coming to
She
the pay-per-view?
is.
All right.
If I get busted open, my goodness, it'll be
Stop the pay-per-view.
It'll be live on pay-per-view. We're not stopping anything. TV 14 rating, I think. So we can go all night with that blood if we want. But yeah, hopefully that doesn't happen. But yeah, I'm not sure I could handpick a better venue. It'll be really interesting because I'm kind of a revered character on television through no real choice of my own. I just kind of do whatever, and the crowd reacts one way or another. And I'm one of the very few people in Ring of Honor who get booed, which is fine with me. I don't care either way as long as I'm getting some sort of reaction. I think originally they wanted me to get cheered, and I just started getting booed, and I was like, well, F it. If they're gonna boo me, I'm not gonna pretend I like it. So I just started telling the fans to go
stick
pound
it.
Yeah, to stick it. And then they just booed me more. So I think for the first time it'll be interesting because I'm fairly certain that I'll get cheered. If I don't care. But I'm fairly certain that this match will have buzz, if nothing else. So I'm very excited for it. I have some fun stuff planned with some familiar faces, and I think it's going to be there's a little insider tip. Stay tuned. But yeah, I think it's really good. And all that being said, Bobby Fish is one of the best pro wrestlers in the world, and it's for one of the most prestigious titles in the history of pro wrestling. So I could not possibly be more excited than I am for this match.
Well, me and Brian should be there. We'll be watching, and it's an All-Star Extravaganza Friday, September 30th on traditional pay-per-view from Lowell, Massachusetts, and this has been fantastic. Mr. Dijak, it's great having you here, and thank you very much for being on the Wrestling Podcast About Nothing.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Yeah, and before we finish, I just want to say one thing. My match with you at Cold Fury, legitimately one of my favorite matches I've ever had in 15 years. And then the moment, it's kind of like sometimes you get those real moments in wrestling. I did get this is awesome chant of my entire career, so I thank you for that. But just the kind of, we had like that moment where we hugged and you had a few nice words to say. I mean, and I'll reserve the words because sometimes those things are just for us. Mm-hmm. But I did appreciate that. One of my favorite matches of all times, and that little moment did mean a lot to me. So thank you, and thank you for doing this.
No, it was my pleasure. It's also one of my favorite matches of all time. I've been very fortunate in the past 2 years to have great opponents at Cold Fury between Chase Del Monte and yourself, and that match definitely lives right at the top of the list, if not the peak of the list of my favorite matches in Chaotic, and it definitely ranks amongst one of my favorite personal memories in all of pro wrestling for me. And my career hasn't been nearly as long as yours, but in my short career that I will remember that match until the day I die. So thank you very much for giving it to me as well.
I didn't expect such a touchy-feely ending here to the.
We're hugging right now. We're me and Brian are
Brian, get off his lap.
Are embracing each other as we speak.
All right, thanks very much, sir.
Yes, thank you.
For more on the Wrestling Podcast About Nothing, subscribe to us wherever you get your favorite podcasts, or find us on our website, thewpan.com. That is thewpan.com.